All right, so we've had some experience with variables now, but we need to talk about something really important: naming variables. In our last activity, we created some variables with some useful names, but it is important that in the future we keep our naming within certain rules. Why might this be? What would be some benefits of making sure that variables have specific rules for naming? I'll give you a second to think about it. Giving it some thought? All right. One reason is those names need to communicate what is in those variables. Remember, variables are boxes. Think of this variable name as a label that you put right on top of that box. That helps you know what's in it without having to open it up, which is kind of takes some time. The next reason would be it makes it easier for you to read your own code. Going back over your code, it might be hard to tell why you named something you did if it's not expressive enough. And finally, it's also to make it easier for other people to understand your code. Funny enough, your code will probably be read by more people than those that wrote it, because you are the only one writing it, but maybe 2 or 3 people are going to read it. And in that case, you need to make it easier for those other people to read. And just like when you're writing a sentence, we have certain rules like capital letter at the beginning and periods at the end. We have to follow certain rules when we're naming variables. Let's go ahead and talk about a kind of an example of why this might be important. I'm going to create some just random names for some variables. So I'm going to make one called foo, and I'm going to assign it a value of 300, and I'm going to make a value goo, and I'm going to assign that a value of maybe 500, and I'm going to make another variable called C and give it the value of the color, let's say purple. Okay, so we got some variables here. And let's go ahead and grab a rectangle. We're going to go ahead and put a rectangle in here. And we're going to go ahead and take foo, put it as the width. We're going to say goo. We're going to put that as the height. And we're going to take the color blue, and we're going to replace that with C. And we're going to hit run. And there we go. We got ourselves a purple rectangle. But if I were to put this code away and come back in a week, or if I was a person reading this code for the first time, if I came along the lines foo, goo, and C, I might be like, what is going on here? So this is why naming is important. It communicates what is inside these containers. So I would probably want to make this a little easier. So I'm going to call this rectangle underscore, and I'm going to say this is the width. And then I'm going to call this rectangle, and I'm going to call this the height. And then I'm going to call this one rectangle underscore color. So I have these 3 variables now, and you might notice the names are much more effective. Now you might have wondered, why did I put this underscore here, this line? Well, I could have done a space. Maybe I could have done words together. Why did I do that? Well, there's a couple reasons. First, you can't actually leave a space. A space confuses the computer and the Python language, and it doesn't understand what you're trying to do. So you have to make sure all your words are contiguous, one with each character next to the other. So we're going to go ahead here and put a underscore. The underscore is basically in place of a space. And this is actually the convention of PEP8, a Python naming convention. It's a standard that we follow when we're naming variables. So it's important to follow that. Same thing with the rectangle with no space or no underscore. This makes it harder to read. When we put an underscore, it becomes easier to see, just like if there was a space there. So now I'm going to go ahead and type these in. Rectangle underscore width and rectangle. And here's an important thing. Naming your variables is really important that they are identical, and that includes case sensitive. So because I accidentally put this capital R there, that would have thought it was a different variable. But in this case, I saw my error before I ran it. But it's not a problem if you run a code with some errors. You might just have to go back and fix them. All right. And then I'm going to put this final one and call it color. Okay, let's hit run. We get a red box. And I noticed I made another mistake. I forgot to call this rectangle underscore color. I was capturing the color variable above the red one. Let's hit the run button and see what happens. There we go. We got our purple rectangle back. And there we are. We've just created some great expressive names for our variables. So next moment, you're going to be going over the understanding quiz. So please take advantage of that and head on to the next module where we'll be talking about a real key concept called abstraction. See you then.